What is the prevalence of archaic reflexes in a given population of athletes? Is the way in which athletes are tested valid and reproducible? These are just some of the questions that Julie Bastière is asking herself as part of her thesis in sports science at the ESTAC Training Center, under the joint supervision of the University of Franche-Comté and Volodalen. Julie has spent the last 3 years exposing the links between archaic reflexes and technical tactics in soccer to the world of science. On the occasion of her last conference presentation and publication of her first article, we wanted to share some of her first results. First, let's briefly define what exactly we are talking about. What really is an archaic reflex? An archaic reflex, or a primitive movement, is an involuntary movement that can be observed following an external stimulus. An archaic reflex is assumed to be integrated after a gradual transition from involuntary gestures generated by the brainstem to a voluntary response operated by the central nervous system. In Julie's thesis, the archaic reflexes of 69 soccer players aged 17 years old were tested and classified according to the methodology described by the UK Institute of Neurophysiological Psychology. Reflexes were scored between 0 and 4, according to the degree of response. 0 being no visible reflex and 4 referring to a disproportionate reaction to the stimulation. 4 different reflexes were evaluated. The Moro reflex, which is a response to posterior imbalance, the tonic labyrinth reflex, which is a response to head extension or flexion, the asymmetric tonic neck reflex, which is a response to head rotation, and finally, the symmetrical tonic neck reflex, which is a response to flexion or extension of the upper or lower body. We could have added the gallant and withdrawal reflexes, which are known clinically to be an important factor for movement, but their scientific background is a little bit too weak and we prefer to leave them out for this study. Let's now present the results of this first study, which looked at the prevalence of these reflexes in this given soccer population of 17-year-olds. 81.2% of players had at least one archaic reflex present. Of the 4 reflexes assessed, the most prevalent is the labyrinth extension tonic reflex. More than 1 in 2 soccer players still have this reflex present. The symmetrical tonic neck reflex was the least present of the reflexes evaluated. Interestingly, the Moro reflex was the only reflex evaluated to show maximum activation. 2 players had this ranking at 4, so 2 players had it at maximal activation. Here's a video of a maximum Moro response. Finally, there doesn't seem to be any link between the presence of reflexes and age or position. However, a trend emerges for players playing in a category over their age. Athletes who are playing in a higher age division tend to have more reflexes present. We will leave you to interpret this last result. As suspected, archaic reflexes are still very much present in the sporting population. At the Volodalen laboratory, we see it every day, but for the very first time, a scientific approach has been applied to issue reflex testing in sports. These results are just the beginning. Julie also demonstrated that the higher a player's reflex level is, the greater the likelihood of them missing a pass or conceding a foul is. But we'll tell you all about that in another video.